5,560 square miles. That is the size of the map in the 2009 video game Fuel. 5,560 square miles. That is roughly the size of Connecticut, and much like Connecticut, the map of Fuel is basically nothing but empty space. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world similar to Mad Max, and this expansive, unnecessarily large map is really the only special part of the game. The driving is mediocre, the races against CPUs are completely rigged in your favor, and the graphics have that classic beige puke color palette of the late 2000s. Just like the map, the entire game is a large, bloated, barren wasteland. When it comes to game maps, there is almost always a wasteland, the places in between the action. The roads and wilderness, stuff that has to be there to look like a convincing world, but places where you don't really have anything to do. Hallways in between the action. The issue with these is that they're kinda really boring. While games are art, the majority are also made for our entertainment, so each and every game with a consistent world has a big, large, gigantic wasteland problem. One of the simplest solutions has been around for a very long time. Pokemon is a game that almost entirely consists of connecting points, routes between cities and towns populating whatever region you're in. These games are really two slightly different games stitched together. The routes serve as obstacle courses, throwing trainer battles and random encounters in your way to strengthen and build your Pokemon team. Still though, despite the life given into these routes, the real content of the game is in the cities and towns. The most iconic part of Pokemon games are the events and gym battles. Each and every city is full of people and quests and stories, even beauty contests that serve as entirely standalone minigames. Each and every location is a hotspot not just for life, but content. But to make all of this possible, to give tension and challenge to the gyms and rival battles and story events, the routes are necessary. Not just to connect these places, but to serve as the other transitionary part of an RPG game, grinding for levels. These two mechanics are almost always combined because it makes some intuitive sense. You don't get stronger at the boss, you get stronger for the boss, and both the journey and grinding make the payoff of beating a strong enemy feel more worth it, like you had to put real effort towards your goal. However, not every RPG has levels. Shadow of the Colossus is a deeply empty game. The appeal of the game is, at first, the boss fights against these hulking, monstrous creatures, but you don't spend all of your time fighting. A lot of the time is spent doing this, riding through a desolate world. Even for an RPG, Shadow of the Colossus focuses heavily on the roleplay. The world is silent, as Wander and his horse Agro hunt down the Colossi to try and revive a girl named Mono. Between the battles, you need to ride to every location with nothing but a guiding light, having you travel through long stretches of silent meadows and meandering cliffsides. It's painfully barren. Any bit of content feels like an oasis, with the rest of the journey being nothing but you and your own thoughts. The game itself feels self-reflective, asking why you're killing these massive creatures. At the start of the game they feel terrifying, but as it goes on, it almost becomes tragic. They weren't really harming anything, and were the last signs of life left in this sweeping land, and you're the one exterminating them. The empty space in the journey, the time you spend writing, makes you think about all of this. There's almost nothing to distract or entertain you, using the world as a way to really put you in the position of Wander, the main character. You think the things he might be thinking, understand his desperation, his questioning, and even his decision to keep going, all to save this one girl. Most games, however, adopt the exact opposite philosophy. As much as Shadow of the Colossus' decision was interesting, it's hardly fun. In fact, for all games revolving around adventure, there's one whole leg of the journey that's just as unfun: the trip back. For the first playthrough of a game, the biggest appeal is that you don't know what's gonna happen, what you'll see, what you'll do, but the trip back is a guarantee. You know these places now, that won't change. So a lot of games focused squarely around fun have gone to great lengths to minimize the lengths you need to travel. The most classic examples are vehicles. Whether it's a car or a horse or a motorcycle with blades on the side of it, vehicles are the most natural way to travel some boring part of the map faster. It can even turn the landscape into a bit of a minigame. With higher speed comes higher risk, so the rocks and bumps and hills that would normally serve no danger become a new form of obstacle. My favorite example of this is in Just Cause 3. Just Cause 2's map was filled with tiny villages between the larger areas, holding collectibles and secrets to hold the player over on the way to bigger events. Just Cause 3 made the decision to abandon those tiny villages, instead having mid-sized towns be the smallest areas available, still giving a lot of things to do compared to the paltry villages of the last game, but it meant that the distance between these places were now longer. Just Cause 3 solved this issue with the introduction of the wingsuit. While the previous game had the grappling hook and parachute, the combination of the two was pretty slow. The normally high-action gameplay was interrupted by a fun but leisurely way to travel, making cars most often the best way to get around. The wingsuit changes the entire chemistry of the Just Cause series. While the entire fun of the game before was blowing up everything in sight, sometimes I found the wingsuit more fun than the destruction itself. Suddenly, the landscape of Just Cause 3, this beautiful island, becomes an obstacle course that you get to define. While you can soar peacefully in the open air, I felt a draw towards getting as close to the ground as possible, weaving between trees and cars and buildings, risking everything for every little bit of adrenaline I could get. There were times where I'd just fly around with a grappling hook and wingsuit, ignoring any objectives and taking in this new dimension of travel laid out before me. It felt so freeing and dangerous and rewarding. I want to play Just Cause 3 while writing this. I like it way more than I should. Anyways, unfortunately, not every game can have a wingsuit, or at least not all of them try to. Even further, some are so vast or so focused on constant entertainment that not even vehicles cut the time spent traveling well enough. So eventually, game developers went, let's just have them teleport. Though to be honest with you, saying eventually is a little misleading. The first game to have fast travel was Dragon Quest, a game released in 1986. Being one of the earliest and most bare-bone RPGs, it had the same combination of leveling and empty space that the Pokemon games would later have. Understanding this even back then, Dragon Quest gave the players a spell, Return, which sent you directly back to the castle, no backtracking required. Pokemon would also give you this ability in the later parts of the games with the HM Fly, letting you travel to any city or town you've already visited. As time went on though, games integrated fast travel further and further into their very level design. The Borderlands 2 level, A Damn Fine Rescue, has you chasing desperately after a robot that kidnapped the leader of the Crimson Raiders, Roland. The design of Borderlands 2 was a lot like a spiderweb, with almost every major area connected to at least two others, forming one solid cohesive world to travel through. However, in the mission to save Roland, the game design is thrown straight out the window. After fighting your way through a camp and killing Bloodmaw, you find your way into the Bloodshot Stronghold, diving headfirst into the heart of the enemy. This mission might be the longest action sequence in all of Borderlands 2, with waves of enemies meeting you in every single room and hallway of the stronghold. You face turrets and nomads and psychos and badasses, bruisers and marauders and mini-bosses, in close quarters and long quarters, and both at the same time. It's kind of difficult to actually die in the stronghold because every time you're downed, there's an enemy right next to you to revive yourself with. It's excessive in a fantastic way. After fighting through hordes of enemies though, you finally meet up with Roland, locked in a prison cell. But before you can free him, he's captured by a robot named Warden out of nowhere. With Roland being the enemy to a number of forces, Hyperion decides to double kidnap him, and suddenly this already excessive mission becomes a full-out war between the Bloodshots and the Hyperion robots, with you stuck in the middle of it. Fitting to the mission extending, you travel even further out to a brand new area, the Bloodshot Ramparts, an open war zone with Roland being pulled to the very, very back. The second entire half of this mission is somehow even more chaotic and action-packed than the first. The war seems brutal and equal at first, taking some of the fire off you, but the further you plunge into the ramparts, the clearer it is that Hyperion is winning the battle. By the end, it's only you against an entire army of robots, all culminating in the final boss of the mission, the Warden bot itself. In terms of the normal bosses in the game, the ones that don't fly through the sky around you or something psychotic like that, Warden is among the more fun ones. It has a classic video game obvious weak spot, but it's not always possible to shoot. You're forced to deal with waves of Hyperion robots crashing into the ground around you, badass loaders, rockets, and other crazy shit happening to serve as a fun little cap to the already chaotic level. After managing to free Roland and kill Warden, he actually uses the ability you had in the first game if you played as him, a turret that can also heal you, and it's one of the only times you get to fight with an NPC in the game. All that's left is to clear out a final wave of robots, and the mission comes to a peaceful end. Now, Borderlands always had fast travel, and occasionally does make you or encourage you to use it, but the end of A Damn Fine Rescue doesn't even bother to offer you another option. To head back through both entire regions would be insane. Even Roland just teleports. Unlike the rest of the areas in the game, the Bloodshot Stronghold and Ramparts don't really serve another purpose, not even as connecting points. The only reason it was here was to throw enemies at you from dawn to dusk, and now that the enemies are gone, outside of some side missions, these areas are absolutely useless. Just teleport out, the game designers say, and honestly, I can't really argue with them. There are even games that don't just remove the trip back, but the trip there too. The Super Mario Galaxy games are a wonderful mix of 3D, 2D, and gravity-based platforming with some of the most atmospheric and interesting level design that the Mario series has ever had to offer. That being said, I've never been able to get the idea out of my head that most of the time we're really not playing one level. You play this mini level, then shoot to the next one, and once you're done with that, boom, next mini level. Sometimes the only thing connecting these worlds is some loose idea or mechanic, or just saying, it's the same level, deal with it. The level design in Super Mario Galaxy is a series of small challenges one after another, with a fancy fast travel between each and every one. Truthfully, this isn't an open world game at all, not that the video was only about that, but it's a regular linear Mario game. The only difference is that it has launch stars instead of pipes. Empty space is taken rather literally, with every level surrounded by the cold void of space, but even the spaces between the planets are nothing more than decorative. You don't spend time traveling it, you're shot directly where you need to be, and catch a nice view in the process. But seeing all of these approaches, Fuel made an interesting decision. Let's make all of it empty space. To describe Fuel as a video game is a little challenging. The game makes the hilarious decision to add a map in the bottom left corner as if you'll ever actually use the roads. Driving through the wilderness is just plain easy and is still the only sort of challenge the game can ever offer you. I watched the entire 2-hour-long video, a nerd-cubed road trip, and between responding to chatters or random tangents, the only thing he could ever really mention about the game is, wow, this game has a big map. This map is so big, the game map is massive. The only other times he mentioned the game were talking about the very obvious lazy glitches or reused assets. Some areas put the exact same model right next to each other, shuffling around the incredibly small asset pool 1,000 times over so we at least have things in the distance to look at. Nonsensical stone ruins and formations, broken windmills, and destroyed half-buried homes to use as ramps. The game can hardly render the vast landscape that is literally the only reason the game is still known, with foliage disappearing right in front of you, the distance being some vague blur of green or brown or black. As said before, the universe of Fuel is a post-apocalypse, and it's one of the most realistic ones I've ever seen. While Fallout calls its worlds wastelands, they're filled with quirky characters and technological remnants, laser beams and communities and factions and life. The stories are huge in stakes and scale, deeply political in its commentary, and varied in every corner of the map. If the bombs didn't drop in the Fallout universe, we wouldn't have Fallout games. For Fuel, though, it might have been a more fun and interesting experience if society was still around. It's the true definition of a wasteland. It's just nothing for miles and miles and miles. There are no special bits of content you get to, no fanfare or rewards or anything to make the journey worth it. It is just nothing. And this isn't some clever turnaround like, ooh, it's secretly brilliant. No, this game sucks. It's so bad, but I still kinda love it because my brain is a pile of mush. It's not a game I'd ever subject myself to, but I'm happy that it at least exists, that the idea was thought of and tried and executed as it was. And while I don't think Fuel was anything close to a masterpiece, it isn't the only game fascinated by empty worlds. A game called The Long Drive released in 2019 to surprising critical acclaim. The goal of the game is to drive, and I truly mean just to drive. You're given a massive set of controls as well as detailed access to nearly every part of your car, making you balance each of the intricate details on your journey to... well, there isn't actually a destination in The Long Drive. The best words to describe this game are survival and exploration, but it doesn't really feel like that. Your goal is truly just to drive, with no actual endpoint in mind. The landscape around you is procedurally generated. Most times when a game uses procedural generation, it comes with the idea of having content around you at all times. Survival games love it, since the environment isn't just a set piece, it's the materials that you use to succeed and build in the game. Minecraft is the most famous example, but games like Astroneer and No Man's Sky and Terraria all use it to turn their expansive worlds into reality. The whole genre of roguelites depend entirely on procedural generation to make every single run unique, promising that you will never play the same game of Spelunky or Hades or Enter the Gungeon. These games use this tool to give the player endless, infinite content, but the long drive uses it for another purpose, to give the player endless, infinite nothing. There are things to be found, structures that have tools and gas and oil, but not always. You can drive on a stretch of nothing for a deeply uncomfortable amount of time. There's no guarantee you'll be provided with what you need. The only guarantee the game has for you is a near endless desert. There's a YouTube channel named How Big Is the Map, a channel that both calculates and travels through as many video game maps as they can. The time it takes can vary anywhere from minutes to hours, but the standout content are the ones that need to be split into parts. By parts, I mean hours-long parts, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, traveling through one single video game world in real time. The series I'm most fascinated with, however, is a game you might not expect, Kerbal Space Program. What Kerbal Space Program is most known for is its extremely difficult rocket building system, requiring a deep knowledge of the game's mechanics and, rockets. Otherwise, all your work falls apart the instant you launch, or even before then. However, for whatever reason, you can ignore the entire point of the game and just kinda walk around. This is the quest that How Big Is the Map started, to walk across just half of the game's starting planet. Part 1 of the series is entirely on a plane of ice. Across the video, the only difference visible at any point is what position the sun is in. In fact, Part 2 is the exact same way, and so is most of Part 3. However, 22.5 hours into the journey, we finally get something new, a mountain peak in the distance. Now things are getting interesting. Over the final 4 hours in Part 3, the mountain grows from a couple of pixels in the distance to a few more pixels. After about 4 more hours, we finally see how all the peaks connect, and slowly but surely, by Part 7 of the series, we finally reach the foot of the hills, 29 hours after seeing the peak. The total length of the series so far, from the start to reaching this hill, is 57.5 hours long. And the fun thing is, the series is unfinished. In fact, it's not even close. With the speed of the Kerbal and the size of the planet, the estimated time to travel just half of it is somewhere around 873 hours. A new part in the series sadly hasn't been uploaded for 10 months, and yet one day I'm sure that at least someone will travel the entire thing. Because, for some reason, we feel a need to explore even these empty worlds. People have gotten to the edge of the long drive, the point where the roads stop generating entirely. Multiple videos traverse the entire map of Fuel, getting to the edge of Minecraft, of Daggerfall, these painfully long journeys, knowing there's nothing at the end to make it all worth it. It can't just be curiosity, we know there's nothing waiting for us, and yet we're pulled along by something to see every inch of these empty worlds. In most games, these roads are small, as short as they can be, letting the player get to what they really want, where they need to go. But for some games, whether on accident or on purpose, they become the roads, things you travel for the sake of traveling. But to me, the thing that draws people into the size of Fuel's map is the same thing as every other game. For some people, the only thing it takes is the knowledge that somehow, somewhere, there is an end to find. And so, they will, no matter what it takes. Thank you, and have a nice day.